Hello everyone, Fly From Home here again with another in-depth aircraft review in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. It seems we are doing increasing numbers of videos in 24 lately, but it is very interesting to see things being released in this new sim. So unfortunately you'll have to bear with the 2024 content for a little bit longer, fans of Flight Sim 2020. It's been a while since I last made one of these videos. Unfortunately, real life gets in the way of playing video games, which is something I'm sure a lot of you suffer with on a daily basis. But thankfully I've found a little bit of spare time, and I thought I would take a look at something which I really like in Flight Simulator, and it's this, the A2A Piper Aerostar 600. Now, a few of you may have seen my review of the A2A Comanche, which is now also in Flight Sim 24, and it was basically my favourite aeroplane in Flight Sim 2020. It was, certainly in terms of GA aircraft, it was incredibly realistic, incredibly fun to fly. It has custom flight dynamics, all sorts of custom systems going on in the background. Very complex aircraft, but very enjoyable to fly and to master and to sort of pole around in, basically. And fingers crossed this is exactly the same sort of thing. Now, a little bit of history about the real aircraft before we get too into talking about how it works in Flight Simulator. So the Piper Aerostar was actually designed by someone called Ted R. Smith, who was interestingly enough, the designer of the B-26 or the A-26 Invader military aircraft in the Second World War. Very cool aircraft. He set up his own aircraft company, and this was his big project. His dream was to make a light executive transport aircraft, and that's what this is. First flew in November 1966 and originally had the good old IO360, the 180 horsepower version, the same version that powered the first variant of the Piper Arrow. For any of you out there who are aviation nutters, I'm sure you've heard of that engine and that aircraft. He originally was bought out by the American Cement Company, which is a strange situation for an aircraft manufacturer to be bought out by. All sorts of strange legal wranglings went on, and eventually in 1972 Ted Smith bought the company back and all the rights to the aircraft and began producing the Aerostars, calling the company the Ted R. Smith and Associates Aircraft Manufacturing Company. He also made a few different variants of the aircraft. There's a pressurized version and the Aerostar 700 Superstar. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? This is just the base spec 600 Aerostar that we have here, though. So how did it end up being a Piper? Well, sadly in 1976 Ted suddenly died, and in 1978 the entire line was acquired by Piper Aircraft Corporation, which continued building two variants, the 600 Alpha and Bravo, and then they reintroduced the 601 Papa, which was the pressurized version. They renamed the aircraft as the PA-60, and that's what we have here in front of us. Now, what is this aircraft? Well, it's quite an interesting design. It certainly doesn't look like your average light aircraft piston twin, does it? In fact, the mid-wing and the high-set tail, all these kind of things, it's quite an interesting looking aircraft. Now, at the time it was first introduced, it was the fastest piston twin general aviation aircraft capable of cruising at over 200 knots, about 220 knots for the early 600 models, to 261 knots for the 700s. No wonder they called it the Superstar. It's very light, it's very low drag, powerful engines, fast climb rates, and able to operate at high altitudes, although this variant does not have any of the features which allow it to go very high, so we'll be sticking to the sort of lower altitudes with this aeroplane. Similar sort of market share as the venerable Beechcraft Baron. I'm sure everyone, or most of you, will have heard of the Baron. It's a default plane in the sim, because they both sort of have a similar kind of goal: fast executive transport. The Aerostar, however, much more fancy design. The Baron is much more standard piston twin fare in terms of its looks and its aerodynamic design. Lots of very interesting and innovative features in this aircraft. There's a complete absence of cowl flaps, which are doors on usually the underside of the engine nacelles, which open up to increase the airflow through the engine. Most of you will know that these engines are air-cooled, just like old VW Beetles or Porsches or something like that. And the cooling is entirely dependent on airflow coming through the front. In fact, you can see the first of the pistons there with the cooling fins on them. But unfortunately, cowl flaps do add drag to the aircraft. So you open a big door underneath the nacelle, you add a bunch of drag to the aircraft. But apparently, the cooling system in this aircraft is so good, it doesn't need any cowl flaps, which reduces the amount of drag. Apparently the 700P did have cowl flaps though, because it had much more powerful engines that had greater cooling requirements. There was a turbocharged variant, as I said. It was turbo normalized, should I say, which had turbochargers to allow it to operate at sea level rated horsepower at much higher altitudes, enabling a higher cruise airspeed. Unfortunately, we do not have that version available today, but it'd be quite cool if A2A gave us that version at a later date, maybe. It has electrically operated fuel control valves, which means that none of the fuel lines have to run through the fuselage, which is a great safety feature. It means you don't get the chance of fuel leaks inside the cabin. It's got electro-hydraulic nose wheel steering. No idea why, but a cool feature. It's got a little tiller thing. We'll see that in operation later. And a flight control system which relies solely on push-pull rods and torque tubes rather than cables, which is quite unique, certainly for an aircraft of this vintage. Any of you who've seen my DA42 or DA40 reviews will know that those aircraft have a similar control setup, and it leads to them being very, very nice to fly, very direct handling aircraft with very responsive controls, no slop in the controls like a cable-operated aircraft usually is. It also has a very high wing loading, which is a bit of a fancy physics aerodynamic term, which means that it's not a very maneuverable aeroplane, but a high wing loading results in an aircraft which is incredibly stable in rough weather. So this is similar to the old Hershey bar wing Piper Arrows, the 1 and 2, which are brilliant for sort of bashing through heavy turbulence. They're basically just flying bricks. And the Aerostar has the same sort of concept. It's just designed to be nice and smooth in turbulence, which is great for passengers. It's a 6-seat aircraft. It's only got one door around the front here, which is a little awkward for anyone sitting in the back, because you have to fold the front seat forward and just sort of climb over them. But the fewer doors you can punch into your fuselage, the stronger it is. So that's generally the logic behind you only put one door on your aircraft. Piper certainly were prescribers to that philosophy in the 60s and 70s. So yeah, light construction, low drag and powerful engines contributed to fast climb rates while allowing high operating altitudes and class-leading fuel efficiency. Fancy. It's a very economic aircraft then as well. Now the downsides of the high wing loading give it relatively unforgiving flying quality, shall we say. It can snap into a stall quite easily on low airspeeds, and when you have a multi-engine aeroplane and you have all the issues with asymmetric forces, if you have an engine failure, getting this aeroplane slow would very quickly lead you into a dangerous situation. So it's very important that anyone flying one of these aircraft keeps their single engine or asymmetric drills sharp in their brain by practicing them regularly. Another one of the strange hazards of this aircraft, because it's got those electric fuel valves, if you lose all electrical power, you actually can't change fuel tanks, which means that any fuel imbalances in the wing tanks you're kind of stuck with, which could lead to hazardous situations. So there are a few downsides to this aircraft, but for the most part, very, very cool aeroplane, very interesting. That's the world's loudest bus. And I'm really keen to have a fly around in this today in Flight Simulator and show you what I think of it. I've never flown one of these in real life. I've got about, my sort of background is I've got about 3,000 hours total, most of which in light aircraft. I do fly the Boeing 737 for an operator based in the United Kingdom at the moment as my main job, but I still instruct as well in my time off. I instruct multi-engine, instrument rating and commercial pilot's licenses. So I do have a fair bit of time in multi-engine aircraft, but all of that time is in, well, most of it is in newer types, especially the DA42. So not quite familiar with this specific aeroplane, although I would absolutely love to have a go in it. So let's have a look round the outside of the aircraft to start with. Now, you've probably been looking at this as I've been yapping away talking about the history of the aircraft, and you've already seen just how good the external model is. You can see the captions on the strut there. The external model is every bit as good as anything I've seen in Flight Simulator. Fantastic high fidelity, beautiful crisp textures. And you can also see there's quite a lot of dirt on the aircraft at the moment. That is not permanent, believe it or not. It builds up over time as you fly the airplane around. I've been flying this airplane around as I've been testing it, and as a result she's getting a little bit dirty, but there's a function on the cockpit tablet which allows you to clean the aircraft. So very, very cool to see this sort of thing. It's pretty typical of A2A that they've got that sort of function. Also, as you might imagine, all of the walk-around bits and pieces are accessible from outside the aircraft, so you can do things like check the oil. Ooh, look at that. Looks very clean. Lovely animations and sounds to go with all of these things. And of course, they have one of these airplanes in their possession at A2A, and they've recorded all of these things from the real airplane, as you might imagine. So very, very cool indeed, and very, very accurate as well. So you can see you can grab hold of the, very gently grab hold of the aileron and wiggle it around to check the function. So yeah, multiple walk-around features. I'm not going to bore you to death too much by doing a full walk-around, but get the gist of it. Fantastic stuff. You can see vortex generators on the underside of the elevator here, the side of the tail, all performance-enhancing features. It can also improve the minimum control speed of the aircraft when you're asymmetric. The DA-42 that I fly, some of them are fitted with VGs on the side of the fin, which improves critical speed. Come around the other side. Ooh, I'll check. Oh, there we go. They've got asymmetric nacelles, a bit like a DA-42. Did not realise that. Oh, the oil's good on this side. Surprise, surprise. Now, as you might imagine, there is an extensive wear and tear, maintenance and failure system on this aircraft, and we'll take a closer look at that when we get inside. I'm going to, ooh, look at that. The tanks are brimmed off. You can see fuel in that. Just the quality of these animations on little things like the fuel caps, it's just unbelievable. Fantastic stuff. And we come around the front. Now, there's no baggage doors or anything like that in the Aerostar, which is one of its failings, unfortunately. So in real life, you're a little bit stuffed. If you had a plane full of 6 people, they basically could take hand baggage only, no suitcases or anything like that. Whereas on this aircraft's sort of natural rival, which would be the, I guess in my head, it would be the Cessna 414 or the 310 or something like that. There's lots of baggage space in those aircraft, so it could be something of an issue. Let's pull the chocks away. I love how they've even given the chocks custom sounds. If you've ever manhandled chocks around, you know these sound like that when you drag them around. And then we'll hop into the aircraft. Right, let's shut the door and make things a little bit quieter, shall we? As you can see inside, absolutely stunning visual quality inside, as well as good as anything I've ever seen in Flight Simulator. Really stunning looking cockpit. Very, very nice indeed. These instruments can all be changed, all that kind of thing, so don't worry about that if you're not a fan of Garmin GPSs or anything. And yeah, really interesting looking cockpit. Nicely laid out though, for the most part, in my opinion. So the tablet that comes with the aircraft, lots of different functions. You can see the default Microsoft Flight Simulator tablet stuff is all on here. But there's also a A2A app as well, which gives you all sorts of info. It gives you checklists, environmental information. All of this wouldn't be a surprise to anyone who's got the command sheet, because it's very similar to what the command sheet runs as well. You can see all this stuff here. You can remove any of the outside stuff. You can put any of the lights on that you want. You can turn any of the electric stuffs on as well. operate the autopilot, do all sorts of stuff. You can even auto start it. All sorts of realism options here. Realistic steering, that's an interesting one. I have a joystick set up as a tiller to use with the steering, but the steering is very interesting on this aeroplane, shall we say. It's down there, the little switch there, if you want to do it manually. But we'll have a go at that today. It's not exactly easy to steer, but hey ho, we've got to give it a try. Gyro drift, yeah, obviously instruments in this aircraft should be slaved gyro instruments, so shouldn't drift off, but obviously if you lose the magnetometer and the wing could drift, so all that kind of stuff. Gyro sounds, yeah, cool stuff. This is obviously depending on where in the world you're flying, so you can set your altimeters to inches mercury or hectopascals, depending if you're in Europe or the US. Fuel and payload and all that kind of stuff there. So I'm going to do a little bit of setup for our test flight to make sure the numbers work, and we'll get back with the engine start. Okay, so I've set the aircraft up at maximum takeoff weight, full fuel tanks, a few of the seats filled in the back along with some baggage. So let's have a quick look at the maintenance system before we get the engines turning, shall we? So the airframe, we can hit the inspect button here and it will just give us a quick overview of everything that we've had a look at outside the aircraft. And as you can see, everything is looking good. This is also where you can wash the plane and clean the bugs off it. So if you remember all those things smeared on the outside, if we hit those two things, we're now back to being lovely and shiny. Isn't that nice? So that's how you do that. Engines, this is the level of detail that this simulation goes into. It models every single wear and tear item inside the engine, and obviously how you fly the airplane and how you manage the engines will have an effect on how quickly this stuff wears out, and it is persistent. Now you can turn that off if you don't want to, but I mean, what's the point in doing that? The whole point of this airplane is to experience the joy of of operating a complex aircraft like this. Let's top the oil up, shall we? Up to 100%, there we go. You can even change what oil grade you're using in the engines, depending on what external temperature you're operating in, the type of spark plugs, all sorts of things like that. Incredibly, incredibly in-depth. Engine analyzer, this is a little animation which will show you the current state of your engine as it's running. It will show you if you're running lean or rich, or if you put in the if your mags aren't working or anything like that. It's incredible, really. Electrical system, this is again is a little animation which will show you how the electrics in the aircraft are operating at any given time. Very, very cool indeed. And different states down here, so new, used and auction, will set the relative wear of all of these different elements. So obviously a nice new airplane, everything's nice and fresh. Used, everything's a bit more worn. And auction, it's a bit of a Jimmy's World special, if you know what I'm talking about. If you hit that, everything is kind of knackered, and you've got to watch out for stuff failing on you all the time. So very, very cool, depending on how much of a challenge you want. Now, the flight we're going to do today, it's basic flight. We're at Leeds Bradford Airport in the north of England. We're going to fly down to East Midlands Airport in surprise, surprise, the Midlands of the UK. It's a short flight, shouldn't be any longer than half an hour, certainly in this fast aeroplane. And we're going to be doing some flight test items on the way to show off the capabilities of this airplane, and also to check the accuracy of the various flight dynamics of the airplane. As you might expect from A2A, I very much doubt anything on this airplane is going to disagree with what the book says it can do, but we will certainly test them out. Right, without further ado, let's get on with starting this thing up. Okay, so I've done the before engine start checklist. We're going to go from the engine start checklist. So prop full forward, that's the middle lever. So you can see the knots color-coded blue like they usually are on most aircraft, but they are still the ones in the middle. Mixture idle cutoff, which they are. Throttle crack, so we're going to start the right engine first. Let's give a little bit of throttle on the right hand side. Battery on. You can hear all the various noises of everything powering up. cooling fans and stuff coming on. Very cool. Low fuel warning out. Yeah, we got no low fuel warnings anywhere on here, so that's good. Fuel selectors, cycle and listen. Okay, so fuel selectors are here. So we've got off, on, and crossfeed. So we're going to cycle them. So we'll do the left one first. I hope you can hear that. So both sides, you can hear them working, and I've set them both to the on position as well. The right fuel booster pump is coming on. Mixture, full check fuel flow on off. So we're going to be looking at the fuel flow gauge here. We're looking for the right needle to come forward. This is the priming process. So we put it forward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, idle cut off. Okay, so the priming process is complete, so we should, fingers crossed, be ready to start the airplane. So starter is the combined with the mag switch down here. Have a look around the aircraft, clear prop out the window, pray to the gods and crank it. Okay. That's embarrassing. Let's try a little bit more priming, shall we? Ah, I thought we had it. I think the trick is going to be a bit more throttle. I love how starting this airplane up is more of a challenge than flying most of my flight simulator airplanes. Okay, let's be a bit more judicious with the throttle. Okay, I do not want to burn the starter out. Let's give it a little rest. As you can see, the battery is depleting quite rapidly with my less than expert attempts to start this engine. I'm really hoping I don't burn the starter out. Let's try again. Oh, this is getting frustrating now. And you can see the battery's almost dead. Oh, I suck at this. Oh my god, finally. Right, so what I had to do is turn everything off to recharge the battery and give it a lot of prime, and then pretty much full throttle it, and then it fired. So crack the throttle is a complete lie. You do a lot more than crack the throttle from what I've seen here, but let's try the other engine, see how that one starts. So we're priming the other side now. You can see we've got gyro pressure. Engine T's and P's are in the green for the right hand side. So we've got a good start. Let's attempt to do the same thing with the other side, shall we? Maybe not. I'm going to put the right hand alternator on just so we've got something charging our electrical system. Going to give it a lot of prime. I don't know how difficult these things are to start in real life. I guess it all depends on the state of maintenance of the airplane. I don't remember it being this hard the last time I flew it, but my capacity for incompetence is limitless, so we'll blame me on this one. Might have flooded it now, but let's see. go. Going a bit mental with the throttle apparently does the trick. So T's and P's green, side of warning light is out. Gyro's registering. Let's put the alternator on. That's 2 good engine starts. Thank God. So the fuel boost pumps can now come off. Gyro pressure's good, yeah. Alternator switches on. Cool. Warm up and run up. So 1000 RPM for both. That's what we have set. Engine temperatures are coming up slowly. By the time we taxi, this should be fine. Prop full forward, mixture's rich. And so this is for the run up here. We're going to wait until we're in the green for this. We're going to pop the avionics on first and get those set up while the aircraft runs up. Now the little digital engine monitor thing here is really, really good. You can see it's saying oil here. It's just because the oil temperature is low. Once everything gets into the green, it should be good. But we're keeping the RPM low in order to protect the engines for that exact reason. We can also press update digital engine monitor to give it all the information from the fuel that we've loaded onto the aircraft. You can do that manually if you're smart. I'm obviously not, so I'm just going to do it the easy peasy way for now. One slight thing which annoys me a little bit is during this mode on the Garmin here, it should do all of these things to the primary nav instrument, which is this HSI here. It doesn't do any of those, so maybe something for A2A to work on, or maybe it's the integration with Microsoft. I don't know. I've not tried it with the TDS GTN 750 yet. I've not got it for Flight Sim 24, so maybe it might be worth doing that at some point. Pop all the other bits and pieces on here. What else we got? We've got the transponder. Make sure that's on the right code, on standby. See the oil warnings are going out as the engines warm up, which is nice. Okay, happy with that. See how she's like moving around under the airflow from, or the slipstream from her own propellers. It's really, really cool, really realistic to see that. Very, very nice and atmospheric. So engine number 2 has warmed up. Number 1 still coming to life a little bit at a time. Probably put some lights on, really, shouldn't we? So the beacon and the navs should have been on for start. Never mind. While we're waiting for that to heat up, let's put a route in the system, shall we? So go to the flight plan page. Now this should auto-populate with where you are at the moment, but I guess that's just a flight sim-ism. Shouldn't take me too long to put leads in. Right, so we're now up to temperature. I've got a very basic route, just a straight line to East Midlands in the box there. So we should be good to go. That's set to GPS. Let's put the data fields on. There we go. Direct tracker 169. That can go in there. Not sure what runway they're using today. Let's just use runway 14 because it's a little bit more convenient to the direction we're going in. I've got 0 wind or anything set up in the sim at the moment, so it doesn't really matter what runway we use. Now there should be enough space here for me to self-position off of this stand, but like I said, the taxiing is very interesting in this aircraft, so I'm going to hold the brakes, release the parking brake, and hopefully the old nose wheel steering is going to respond to what I tell it to do, but I guess we'll see. So I'm going to put my tiller hard over to the right, and she's coming around, using a bit of toe brake to help her. Actually quite a manoeuvrable aeroplane, it's just very tricky to get it to stop turning when you want it to. That person's suicidal. Having a tiller for a light aircraft, very, very rare, of course. Normally it's a large aircraft type thing. Love the way the aircraft kind of bumps over the taxiway, very, very realistic. Love the sounds as well. Please stop turning. There we go. Now I'm going to leave the headphone simulation mode off in the cockpit for now, just so we can hear the brakes squeaking. It's so cool. Set parking brake, 1000 RPM. Yeah, so I'm going to leave the headphones off so we can enjoy the sounds of the aircraft, but I will probably put them on when we get airborne because it does get a little bit loud. So we should be ready for our run-up now. Everything's in the green here, which is looking good. The mixers are full rich, so I'm going to cover the brakes and ramp up to 1500 RPM. There we go, 1500 on both. T's and P's are on the green, no warning lights. The alternator should be giving us 28 volts, so let's have a look at that. Push for volts, there we go. Yeah, looks around about 28, it's the bottom scale there. Throttle set for 2100, so hold on to your pants, here we go. There's 2100. I'm going to cycle the props. So we'll do 3 cycles. First one, looking at engine number 2. Looking for drop in RPM, rise in manifold pressure. Perfectly simulated there. Second time, we're going to cycle, look for any oil coming over the cowling. And the third time, we are looking for oil pressure. So that's there. Oh, in fact, that's not there. Oh yeah, it is. It's that little one there. Yeah, it's maintaining. And we'll do the same with the other engine. Apparently you're supposed to get it to go all the way down to 1000 RPM, just to make sure everything's working. And we're doing a mag test, so number 2 engine first. Max of 175 RPM drop. Left mag. Right mag, it looks about 100 RPM at most. Left engine. Left mag, right mag, back to both. Happy. Okay. We're getting some cylinder head temperature warnings because we've been sat here revving the hell out of the engines for a bit, so check the idle, that's nice and smooth, and back to 1000 RPM. Use 1000 RPM ground idle just to keep air flowing through the cowlings, as I was mentioning earlier. So the gyro pressure's good, it's in the green there, there's no dull's eye. So that's all the warm-up done. Cabin doors closed, controls full and free. Let's just get this out of the way so we can actually see our yoke. Go. Right hand down, left hand down. I'm trying to visually check the controls as I do this. Up and down, and rudder, of course, which is separate to the nose wheel steering, so we can test it while we're stationary here. Mixture full forwards, it is. Fuel selectors on, they are. They're on set to the on position. Prop full forward, they are. Boost pumps coming on both sides, 1 and 2. Instruments are all set for takeoff. Flaps 0 to 20 degrees. I don't think we're going to need a huge amount of flaps, so let's go for 10 degrees flap. Interesting flap lever on this aircraft. It's up, neutral and down, so you basically have to set it to the down position and then it will, yeah, do that. There we go. F7 and F6 are your friends when doing that, and doing it by hand's a bit awkward, so you can see we've set it to 10 degrees here. It's a bit like the kind of dialer flap thing. You can have any kind of fractional flap setting you want, which is nice, but I'd imagine in turbulence that's a bit of a pain in the butt. Trims set for takeoff, so we've got a cool little trim gauge down here. I'm just using the electric trim here to trim her to neutral. Rudder trim is neutral as well. You can maybe set a little bit of rudder trim in if you wanted, but I'm not a fan of doing that. Pitot heaters desired. It's a lovely day, so we shall leave it off for now. Parking brake release throttle forward. Now we usually fly with piece of heat on all the time, but older aeroplanes like this, maybe you want to keep it off. In fact, let's just do it. Let's put it on strobes, left and right landers, all the lights are on, ready for lineup. We're going to set the transponder to alt reporting, brace the brakes, off we go. So runway 14 is going to require a little bit of a backtrack. Now you may be wondering with this tiller thing, oh, how do you steer on the runway then? Well, when you're going down the runway, the aerodynamic forces over the rudder should still be able to steer the aeroplane. It's just at lower speeds that you use the tiller, which is very similar to how it works in an airliner. In the 737 we have, I believe it's 14 degrees of nose wheel deflection, just using the rudder pedals, but most of the amount of steering we have while taking off or landing is down to the aerodynamic force on the rudder. And that's the same story as we've got here. Soon enough, we should be airborne, and the funny nose wheel steering shouldn't be a concern. Now, of course, you can just turn this off in the options and steer it with the rudder pedals exactly how you would any other aeroplane, but I'm all about that realism. I want the real Aerostar experience. Anyone who's flown a real one, please let me know if they're this tricky to taxi in real life. Or maybe it's just my control setup. Maybe you guys have got some advice for me. How to improve my experience. You can see we're going all the way to the end here. Definitely don't need this much runway, but we're going to use it anyway. There's a little turnaround at the end there, but I'm not going to bother with that. Scenery, by the way, is Innie Builds Leeds Bradford version 2, I believe. Very, very good scenery. I'm quite familiar with this airport, and it looks exactly like this in real life, pretty much. I love that brake squeak. Very, very atmospheric. Right, let's do a bit of a spin round at the end here. One of the nice things about this nose wheel is it's really, really got a good range of travel on it. You've basically a shopping trolley on the ground. It's just getting it back straight again can be something of an issue, and obviously for the takeoff roll you want it as straight as possible. There we go, that's pretty good, I think. Right, so let's set to there, just so I remember my speeds. So we're going to be rotating at 85, climbing initially 24 inches at 2400 RPM. Looking for best rate of climb just over 120 knots. And we should be getting between 1500 and 1800 feet per minute, according to the performance figures of the aircraft. So bear that one in mind. Controls in the wind, but there's no wind, so we're going to come off the brakes and begin to advance throttles smoothly to full power. Fantastic sounds. Very, very quickly accelerating. Look brainy forward, it's about there, gentle back pressure. Beautiful. A little bit of trim. Allowing the aircraft to accelerate a little bit. Gear can come up. Trying to maintain runway track as best I can. Even with no wind set in the simulator, it's a little bit lumpy and bumpy. That's just thermals. counter-rotating engines, I believe, so no yaw forces to worry about. Passing 500 AGL, I'm going to crank the flaps up. Lovely, stable aeroplane, very easy to handle, very realistic. It just feels like there's lots of weight and inertia to it. Let's get that on 120. Set 2400. Climb power. Come back on the props a little bit. Okay, there we go. So there's the just over 1500 feet per minute rate of climb that we were expecting. Varying a little bit, obviously, with the bumps, and my flying's not mega accurate. Slightly less power than we needed as well. So on that right-hand engine, I'm just going to try and jockey the throttles around to give us what we need. Going to climb to 5,000 feet because we've got performance figures for 5,000 feet in terms of cruise speed, so that's what we're going to aim for. Now, because this is a normally aspirated airplane, no turbochargers, as you climb, you have to keep remembering to advance the throttles to maintain manifold pressure. So it will drop off, just to do with the decrease in air pressure. Get the trim sorted, and then we'll see what kind of speed we can get out of this bird. Right, let's see if we can get the autopilot to hold the controls for us for a little bit while we mess around with the engines. So let's go autopilot master on, heading and altitude. It's going to bring the props back to 2400 RPM. Still got 24 inches of manifold pressure sets. Now, as per the aircraft documentation, we should be making about 250 miles an hour at this altitude and power setting. So, equates to about 217 or so knots. So let's see if we can pull that off. See the airspeed steadily increasing. Making 200 at the moment. Let's see how our engines are doing. So as you can see, everything's gone kind of brown on there, which means we're running a bit rich. So what we can do is bring the mixture back a little bit to make sure the engines run a little bit more healthy. Don't want to lean this off too much because that is going to wear the engines out quite quickly, but that's looking a little bit more like it. Maybe come back slightly more than that. There we go. Now obviously you can do it the old-fashioned way by looking at the cylinder head temperatures here and setting something that's slightly richer peak, or indeed using the analyzer here to work out what your cylinder head temperature should be. So we've got 200 indicators here, but 217 over the ground. Now, given that we've got no wind set in the simulator today, that's basically our true airspeed. So what we're seeing there is that the aircraft is doing the exact airspeed to the knot that the figures say it should do, which makes me very happy inside, but we didn't really expect anything else from A2A, did we? It'd be very surprising if their aeroplanes didn't perform bang on the money. my headphones on. We've had enough of that lovely engine note, I think. Talk to you a little bit more clearly now as we come screaming over the moors here. Fantastic scenery from Flight Sim 24. Lovely flight frame rates as well that we're getting. Cannot complain at all. I believe that is the city of Sheffield looming in our windscreen. So we don't have far to go to East Midlands. So we should probably get on with our general handling checks, given that we're going to be on top of East Midlands pretty soon at this speed. So let's slow things down first of all. Bring the power back a little bit. Don't have to worry about shock cooling these engines all that much because they aren't turbocharged, so you haven't got boiling hot turbocharger casings to worry around. Just bring the power back and let the airspeed settle. Okay, so we've slowed down to about 150 knots, which still seems absurdly fast for a piston twin, but such is life in the Aerostar. And we're going to pop our mixtures back up to full rich, pop the boost pumps on. We're going to go autopilots, disengage manual flights, and master off there. And we're going to have a little play around with some general handling. So we're going to start with some fairly basic maneuvers. We'll start with a steep turn. Now, with an aircraft with a high wing loading, I'd expect quite a lot of pull required in a steep turn, but it should be very, very stable. So let's have a look at the side of the aircraft. We're going to go all the way around to the left, ending up in the position where we are now. So round we go. We're going to go for 45 degrees angle of bank. And yeah, straight away, quite a lot of back pressure required, but once you've got the right back pressure set, look how incredibly stable the aeroplane is. Exactly what I would expect from the Piper Arrow, really. And that's just what we're getting with the Aerostar. Not a great deal of rudder required, very, very light rudder pressure. See the ball in the middle. In fact, I'm putting a little bit too much in there, so I'm going to relax rudder pressure slightly, keep the back pressure coming. You can see the airspeed's bleeding off quite quickly, so I'm going to add a bit of power to compensate for that. And we're losing a bit of altitude now. Oy, let's kick it back out of that one. So you can see quite quickly when you get on the back end of the drag curve how quickly it starts to drop airspeed, which again is going back to what I said about it being perhaps one of those sorts of aeroplanes which can bite you. But they're all aerodynamic characteristics which A2A seems to have modelled very, very accurately. Obviously, they've got their own version of this aeroplane, so they can just go out and test these things whenever they want, really. So, very happy with steep turn performance. Let's try a stall, shall we? So we're going to try a clean stall, fully developed, and see how she handles. I'm just going to shut the throttles, pop the props up to max RPM, and just pitch to maintain altitude. We're not going to accelerate her into the stall or do a power on stall or anything like that. Just a very basic power off stall. And see what happens. There we go. You see the wing dropping there? Quite high airspeed that happened as well. Just coming through about 85 knots, and very easy to pull her into a secondary stall even at 100 knots. You can see the buffet happening here, and the wing going again, immediately relaxing the back pressure, advancing to full power, trading altitude for airspeed, and then re-establishing the straight and level attitude as the airspeed recovers. So yeah, there's those slightly edgy aerodynamic qualities that we know that this aeroplane has. There's a few twins of this era, like the 310 has quite notoriously difficult stall characteristics, so it's quite obvious that you do not want to be getting this aeroplane slow. Just for an example, set a high-ish power setting. I'm going to pull one of the engines back to idle, simulate an engine failure in the cruise, and we'll just see how quickly the aircraft develops into a spiral descent. So That's the left engine reduced to idle. And actually, that's not too bad, actually. It's quite controllable. Bit of rudder in the right direction. And we can get that back under control. And then if we simulate a feather, you can see that we've actually still got quite a lot of performance. So that's not too bad, to be fair. So let's reset everything, get it back up to 5,000 feet again. Quite interested to do a fully configured stall, so I'm going to select full flap and gear down, and we're going to pull her into a stall again. See how she handles with everything hanging out. As you can imagine, the speed's going to come back very quickly now. Look at that. Very easy to get in this situation when you're on final approach. Stall speed, as you might imagine, quite a bit lower with the flap out. And yeah, there she goes, and there goes the wing drop. To try to recover reasonably quickly. Drag flaps coming out straight away, which is tricky with that flap lever. Positive rate of climb, the gears coming up. Trying to let the speed build to 120 where we know the aircraft is happiest. Positive climb airspeed stable increasing. I'm going to start retracting the flaps a bit more. 20 degrees, 10 degrees, and up. So yeah, actually slightly more benign with gear and flap hanging out, which is good because that is the configuration where you're probably most likely to be going into a stall when you're kind of base to final config or on final approach. So it's good to see that the aircraft's a little bit less violent with stuff hanging out. Again, anyone who has real-world experience with this aircraft, please let me know if that's accurate, but I've got no reason to believe that it isn't, given how good A2A are with these kind of things. I'm going to reset that cruise config, get the engines happy again, and we'll set off on our merry way. Okay, so we're rapidly coming up on East Midlands. I'm setting up for an approach on runway 09 to the airfield just there, just behind the power station. I've got the ILS tuned, but we're not going to fly an instruments approach. We're just going to use it as a bit of a reference. It's a bit dark in here, isn't it? Let's try some instrument lights. There we go, that's better. Right. Autopilot off. Autopilot master off. Start coming down. Mixtures forward. Of course, by mixtures, I mean that in a kind of loose sense of the word. It's a fuel-injected aeroplane, so effectively you're just controlling the fuel flow. But that's getting technical, and I'm not very good at technical things because my brain is not quite big enough for those sorts of things. Let's set the course as required. About there, about 088 I believe, final approach course. And yeah, we've got a bit of gyro drift going on, that's interesting. I guess it's because of the steep turns. You can see we're picking up a glide slope, which is interesting for this kind of angle. And we can see just how slippery the aeroplane is. We're still doing 180 knots. I can try shutting the throttles a little bit more. Get that speed back. Bear in mind, this is the sort of airspeed you might expect coming in coming onto base leg in a Boeing 737, and we're in a piston twin. So you can easily see how a less experienced pilot flying one of these might get themselves into a lot of trouble. I say that as someone who definitely is not competent enough to be flying one of these around. 160 is a little more comfortable. Normally in the 737 I usually try to get onto to about 170 knots coming onto the centre fix, which is the kind of the start of the instrument approach. So we'll aim for somewhere close to that, which is mad to be saying that about a light aircraft. A very, very cool light aircraft though, I might add. To be giving ourselves quite a short final here. We're only about 5 miles. Just going to shut the throttles, get the speed under control, and then drop the landing gear, I think. That very quickly starts to drop the speed. Let's go flaps 10. Put us on a bit of an intercept heading. 120 knots feels like a sort of comfortable speed for a light aircraft to be doing at this stage of an approach. So let's stick to that. Get out of the stage of flaps in. Localizer's coming across. I'm just using the localizer to help me line up with the runway here. Touch on the low side now. So we'll catch that. There's the runway, 4 red lights. Let's try to reduce our rate of descent a touch to compensate. 3 miles to go. Let's get configured nice and early. So I'm going to go full flap now. For an approach speed of just over 100 knots feels about right. Still a touch on the low side. I'm just flying a very shallow rate of descent to try and catch the glide path. Aeroplane feels very stable though, very easy to handle, which is nice. We got props full forward, and that's interesting. It's exactly the opposite of what I wanted to do there. I thought I was going to go props full forward. It's going to props full feather. Hopefully that's not wrecked the engines. We are visual, so we're sort of ignoring the PAPIs and the touchdown markers. We're just going to try and put it as close to the numbers as possible. That's not bad, I'll take that. Flaps to travel. Just coming up to full power. Ground handling of this airplane is really, really good. Very easy to keep it straight on the runway, which you can't say for a lot of Microsoft Flight Simulator airplanes. Okay, flaps are up. Climb power is coming in. Fly a nice easy left-hand visual circuit then. See just how quickly this airplane gets to circuit altitude. We'll go for a 1,000-foot AGL circuit. It's about 300-foot elevation at east mid, so we're going to fly it at about 1,300. I'm actually reducing power a bit just to reduce that rate of climb to make it easier to level off. Pull the power back quite a lot now. Now, for noise purposes, you may want to pull the props back quite a lot when you're in a visual circuit. Some pilots advocate for things like that. I don't know, I'm sort of on the fence. Used to do it quite a lot, but it's adding complexity and that sort of stuff to your circuit, so I guess it's an individual thing. So on downwind. So brakes are pressurized, parking brakes off, undercarriage is coming down, mixture's full rich, mags are on both. Let's get a stage of flap out now, so let's go flaps 10. There we go, close enough. So that just adding a bit of drag just makes the airplane a little bit more speed stable. In fact, I'll tell you what, let's see what she's like with no flaps. So let's do a flapless circuit this time around. Probably going to be approaching about 120, I guess. I mean, there's no advice on here for it, but if your best glide is 122, well, it's 105. Okay, let's go for 100 knots. Well, 110 knots. See how we get on with that. See how nose up it flies, even at 120 knots with no flaps. This would be pretty much top speed for something like a Beech Duchess, by the way. So other piston twins are maxed out at this sort of speed. This airplane flies around the circuit at this sort of speed. So it's certainly a challenge, but a very cool challenge. As I was reading up about the Aerostar to get a bit of background info on the aircraft for this video, there's quite a large section on Wikipedia about crashes, so it does have a little bit of a reputation, shall we say. Try not to become a statistic. Turning onto about a 3-mile final, that's looking pretty good. The speed really quite high in this turn, again, just for safety purposes. Lots of back pressure required in the turn to prevent the rate of descent going very high. Again, something you'd expect from a high wing loading aircraft, I guess. So there's about our approach speed. Picture's looking okay. We're on the 4 reds again, but again, like I said, we're VFR visual. We're not aiming for the touchdown markers, we're more aiming for the numbers, so there's nothing wrong with that. I'm quite happy with the profile of the approach at the moment. Attitude is much more nose high, so in real life you'd be sort of hiking your seat up a little bit, maybe to see over the nose a touch more. Paying very close attention to the airspeed, but again, the airplane's lovely and stable, so once you've got it established and set as an attitude to give you a sensible rate of descent, you pretty much just let go almost, and just let it come down. So gear down, 3 green, runway clear and available, approach stable, permission we don't need, props can go full forwards. Okay, I'll take it, not bad. Flaps already up, so we're just going to advance the throttles. Full power, 85, rotate. Lovely jubbly. Positive climb gears coming up. Right, I'm going to flip to the emergencies page now, because I'm going to remind myself of what our best rate climber 1 engine is, because I'm going to do something very not sensible now. We're going to shut an engine down. So, oh no, engine failure. Power up, gear up, flap up. Pitch for 114 knots, best rate climber 1 engine. Quite a lot of rudder required here. Struggling to get that speed as well. Rate of climb very, very marginal. Dead leg, dead engine, left leg's dead, left engine's dead. Confirm. And feather. Okay, now the drag's gone. Prop's going to feather very nicely there. Now we're getting a little bit of performance back. Okay, left engine, mags off, left engine, fuel off. Speed's coming back a bit. Okay, she's pretty easy to handle, but performance is very, very marginal on 1 engine, as a lot of older piston twins are, even with this much power. You might consider flying, in fact what we're going to do is fly a right-hand circuit this time around, so we get to avoid turning towards the dead engine, which is something of a no-no when you are pretty marginal on performance while asymmetric. I'm going to pop the left alternator off as well. I'm still climbing, only just using very, very minimal angle of bank here. See, we're getting cylinder head temperature warnings from the other engine, which is not great. So what I'm going to do is level off and try and gain some airspeed, and that should put some airflow through the engine and cool it down, because the last thing we want is our remaining engine to die on us. Great things is how good the rudder control is. So that's a very nice surprise. Let's get some rudder trim in to just help us out a little bit. Just aiming to keep the ball in the middle and the wings level. You can of course use a little bit of wing down towards the live engine, but you want to try and minimize that as much as possible, really. See, we're now picking up speed quite nicely, and the cylinder head temperatures are dropping as the airflow increases through that live engine. Just going to bring her back a little bit. I'm going to shut the dead engine throttle. In fact, that's probably good practice. Just bring that back. See, the manifold pressure for the dead engine has just settled at ambient. Is about 29 or 30 inches of mercury. Come back very slightly on the prop. Again, we're just trying to keep the remaining engine as happy as possible. Now, various trains of thought when flying asymmetric with an engine failure. Some people say you want to fly a very tight circuit, stay as close to the airfield as possible. Other people say fly basically the same profile as you normally would, because if you're not used to doing very, very tight circuits, you're more likely to make a mistake and have to do a go-around, which obviously is very critical when you're down to one engine. You want to avoid that as much as possible. I'm more on that side of the argument generally, so I will usually fly the same circuit profile if I'm asymmetric as if I had both engines working. But you can, of course, modify the situation as you see fit. If you think your other engine is about to fail too, you would probably be more inclined to keep the aircraft tight into the airfield. So if that other engine did go, at least you could kind of glide onto the airfield, even if you can't make the runway. So again, I'm trying to give myself about a 3-mile final. I'm going to come out a little bit further than that, I think, this time, just because I'm using a much lower angle of bank, and therefore my turns are much wider. Now you'll notice I've not put any gear or flap out yet, and that is fully deliberate because I'm aiming to use the gear and flap as drag to help me descend, to avoid having to change the throttle all that much. Drop that down there to get it out of the way. So as soon as we decide that we want to start descending, I'm going to extend the landing gear. Use the drag from that to initiate the descent. I'm just pitching to maintain about that 120 knots. The slower we go, the less control we're going to have over the aircraft. So I'm quite happy the airspeed at the moment is giving us plenty of control. But if we let it degrade too much, we're going to start struggling. Straight away with the gear down, the airspeed starts to bleed off just with the gear. With the DA42, normally you have to throw gear and flap and all sorts out there to descend it. Just the gear this time is enough. So I'm going to. This is very very marginal on performance here. We're getting a bit slower than I'd really want to be, to the point where I'm going to pull the gear back up again. Actually, full power, prop full forward on the live engine. I'm struggling to maintain airspeed, so I'm going to pull the gear away. A bit of a dramatic decision to make, but it just shows how much drag that landing gear has on this airplane, much more than I was anticipating. So the airspeed immediately starts to recover. We're going to pull the gear at the very last second. We're going to hold the aeroplane a little high on profile, I think. It's probably the best plan. And then we can trade that altitude for airspeed and hopefully make the runway. I'm just going to fly level, let the airspeed recover. Okay, now things are looking okay. Gear's going to come back down again. I'm just going to pitch, try and keep it on the on the pappies this time. Back on the power a little bit. I'll take it. Not exactly on the centre line. That was a lot stressier than I thought it was going to be, I'm not going to lie. But great example there of how marginal on performance a lot of these older piston twins are when you get down to one engine. Okay, I'm going to stop her there. Unlike big aeroplanes, little ones don't like to taxi on one engine, so I'm going to have to try and get this engine going again, so bear with. See if I can keep it on the centre line of the stand. This will be quite an achievement if I manage to pull this one off. Maybe I'm getting better at this with time. There we go. That's close enough in my book. Parking brake set. RPM 1000. Okay. Avionics coming off. Throttles to idle. Mix, just idle cut off. Mags off. Fuel valves off. Nav, beacon, alternators and battery. And pop the door open. Okay, there we have it. The A2A Piper Aerostar 600. What do I think of this aeroplane? Well, as you might imagine, I'm a huge fan of this thing. This is really, really good. And you wouldn't expect anything else from A2A. I believe probably at the moment this is the best multi-engine piston aircraft you can get in Flight Sim 2024. I've not tried the new Black Square, upgraded Baron or Bonanza. I know they are supposed to be very, very good as well, but A2A, just in terms of not just the system set, because I know A2A is very, very good at that, but the flight dynamics and ground handling dynamics are absolutely phenomenal with this aeroplane. Every bit as good as anything I've ever flown in a flight simulator. If you want to break it down into all the different aspects, you've got an unbelievable external and interior model, so the graphics are absolutely phenomenal. You can just see just the level of detail, and it's not just how great the textures and the physical modeling of the aeroplane is. There's loads and loads and loads of little animations. Everything has its own little custom sound to it. You have things like the dirt on the surface of the aircraft, bug splatters building up over time. You've got the whole experience of owning and running one of these airplanes really when you buy this add-on. You have maintenance to worry about. You've got random failures to worry about. You've got to manage the engines sensibly, otherwise you're going to wear them out very quickly. Even how you land the airplane, you can wear the tires down ahead of schedule and all that kind of thing. Everything is modelled to an insane level of detail. In terms of the performance of the aircraft, as far as I can tell, it's spot on. Obviously, I have no experience with this aircraft in real life. I've flown older piston twins from time to time, but for the most part, I've flown the DA-42, which is a very different aeroplane. This is much more challenging to fly because it's much more complicated. It's also very, very fast, and even though it's very, very fast and has a lot of power, it's actually quite marginal on single engine performance, as we saw, so it requires very accurate flying to keep it in one piece when you're flying asymmetric. And as I said at the start of the video, it's very, very important that you practice those sorts of things in real life to make sure if it ever happened to you, you were able to deal with the situation, because as we saw with the stall characteristics of this plane, you get it too slow, it will drop a wing and enter an incipient spin very, very quickly. If you're asymmetric, you get too slow, you enter that incipient spin, it's very quickly going to become a fully developed spin, and there is no recovering from that. In the vast majority of multi-engine airplanes, I'd imagine this is exactly the same, which is why this aeroplane has a little bit of a reputation as a bit of an edgy plane, a bit of a difficult thing to handle. But we're in the world of flight sim, and fortunately you can't smash your face in the world of flight sim unless you headbutt your monitor, I guess. So this is a great place for you to try this aeroplane out and have some fun with it and do all sorts of different things. Now, are there any downsides? I'm really struggling to find them, to be fair. I haven't... I mentioned the little thing with the equipment fit, but again, you know, it's the Microsoft Flight Sim default GPS that I was using. If I use the TDS GTN 750, maybe I'd be getting the right indications on the panel. I don't know. It would be really cool to maybe see some more variants. We've just got the base spec aircraft here, which I understand because that's the aircraft that A2A have access to. That's their own aeroplane. But it'd be really cool to perhaps see the turbocharged variant or the pressurized variant. There's even a turboprop variant out there somewhere. So it would be very cool to maybe see some more variants. In terms of colour schemes, there's a reasonable selection of colour schemes, but they all look quite similar. So it might be nice to see some different colour schemes. But again, I'm very much playing devil's advocate here, because you could easily go on flightsim.to and download 50 million different colour schemes for this thing. It's certainly not difficult. So the only other criticism I would have is not a criticism of A2A at all, but it's a criticism of this aircraft. So it's a very high performance aeroplane. However, it's got very, very little anti-icing equipment on board. Now, if you're flying around in Florida, for the most part, it's not a huge issue. You can go up to 14,000 feet or something like that on oxygen, and you're not going to encounter icing conditions unless you fly into a thunderstorm. In the UK and in many parts of Europe, you're going to be flying around at this time of the year. This is filmed in November, in case you were wondering. And you're going to encounter bad weather conditions, low cloud, and you're very quickly going to encounter icing. And I did a flight from, I think it was East Mids to Edinburgh when I was testing this thing out. Encountered icing conditions. There's not an awful lot you can do. It has electrically heated propellers, but it has no boots, no TKS, weeping wing, or anything like that. So in terms of that, it's very, very deficient. So if you're wanting to buy this airplane to do long flights all over the place, all over the US, all over continental Europe or the UK, just bear in mind that you might get yourself into quite a lot of trouble with icing. There's not much you can do other than try and fly out of it or descend out of it. So it does kind of limit the applications of this airplane a little bit, but again, I'm really devil's advocate playing here. I'm just trying to find anything to balance the glowing positives out. For the most part, I would say that this is the finest GA aeroplane I have tried in Flight Sim 2024, and if you are a fan of GA aeroplanes, of piston twins, of any sort of high performance civilian aeroplane, I would 100% recommend picking this up, because it is a hugely competent piece of work. You can tell it's a real labour of love for A2A, and massive compliments to those guys. They've done another amazing job, and I would certainly recommend you go out and pick this airplane up. So it's not hugely expensive in my opinion. It's $49.99, it's $50. I'll put a little breakdown of what that is in euros and GBP on the side of the screen as we speak. I'm just looking at the A2A website, and I can see they've got a livery pack for a bunch of new liveries for this airplane for $5. So that's just kind of answered my criticism about there being not that many diverse colour schemes. And again, like I said, flightsim.to is your friend. But yeah, I definitely recommend going out and supporting A2A. They're a brilliant set of developers from what I've experienced so far with the two products that I own. And certainly we want more of that in the Microsoft Flight Sim community. So without further ado, I will bid you farewell, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Please do comment below what you think of this aircraft, what you think of this review, and what you'd like me to do next time. Take care. Bye-bye.